Welcome the Lord's chosen. They called you an earth angel, but they forgot every angel in Scripture had a sword, not a smile. That's the part people overlook. Everyone loves the idea of a gentle, glowing figure who heals, helps, and never raises their voice. They adore the light-bearer version of you until that light exposes their behavior. Then suddenly you're acting different, too direct, or their personal favorite. You've changed. If anything, you finally stopped pretending you didn't notice the nonsense. Here's the uncomfortable fact. According to psychological studies, people consistently underestimate the strength of those who appear calm and compassionate. We assume the quiet ones are safe, predictable, manageable. But calm is not weakness. Calm is a decision, a very expensive one. And when that decision expires, people start remembering angels were never designed for decoration. They were designed for intervention. That's where this story gets interesting. You were never the harmless figure they built in their minds. You were the one holding the line. You were the one choosing peace even when chaos was cheap and easy. And the moment you stopped absorbing their disrespect like some emotional shock absorber, they panicked. Not because you became someone new, but because you stopped being what made their lives convenient. This is the part they didn't factor in. An earth angel doesn't go to war out of rage. They go because a boundary has been crossed one too many times. They don't roar. They don't throw tantrums. They just switch modes. One day you're the soft landing. The next, you're the reason someone's ego files an insurance claim. And let's be honest, there's a special kind of comedy in watching people who underestimated you suddenly scramble for explanations. They go from, "You're too sensitive," to, "I always knew you were powerful," in under 7 seconds. Olympic-level backpedaling. So this isn't a story about becoming ruthless. It's a story about remembering who you truly are. Someone built for peace, yes, but also built for the kind of war that restores order when everything around you falls out of line. It's the side of angels people don't like to talk about until they experience it firsthand. Number 1, they loved the angel in you because they assumed you were harmless. People have a strange way of loving what they think they can control. They called you an angel, not because they respected your strength, but because they assumed your goodness came without consequences. They admired your light without realizing there was fire behind it. They mistook patience for passivity, kindness for vulnerability, and compassion for a lack of backbone. They didn't see the warrior beneath the halo. They only saw what they wanted to see: someone safe, someone manageable, someone they could take for granted. This assumption is what gave you the upper hand without anyone realizing it. While they were busy building a mental image of you as harmless, you were quietly understanding the patterns, the intentions, the weaknesses of those around you. You learned who would stab without hesitation and who could be trusted. They loved the idea of your angelic self because it didn't challenge them. It didn't demand accountability. It didn't remind them that actions have consequences. In their minds, your light was a decoration, a comforting presence that made them feel good without forcing them to confront their own flaws. What they didn't understand was that your harmlessness was a choice. You chose to protect, to forgive, to endure. You weren't weak, you were deliberate. Every act of patience, every silent tolerance, every kind word was measured and intentional. You restrained yourself because you valued clarity over chaos, strategy over reaction, and that is exactly what they missed. They saw only what was convenient to see, never the potential that lay beneath. The moment they realized the mistake, the halo didn't disappear. It transformed. The same hands that healed could protect, the same voice that soothed could command, and the same mind that understood could dismantle illusions. They loved the angel they thought they knew, but they never accounted for the fact that angels are not built to be harmless. They are built to confront, to protect, and when needed, to fight. Their admiration was never for your real power. It was for the version they could manipulate, and that misjudgment became your secret weapon. Number 2, your compassion was never weakness. It was restraint. People often mistake compassion for weakness because they only see the softness on the surface. They see someone who forgives, someone who gives second chances, someone who endures without exploding, and they immediately label it as vulnerability. They don't realize that compassion is not the absence of strength. It's the conscious choice to hold back, to restrain, to act with purpose rather than impulse. You were never weak. You simply understood the value of self-control, the power of measured responses, and the quiet authority that comes from knowing exactly when to act and when to remain patient. The truth is, restraint requires a level of strength most people will never comprehend. It takes more courage to remain calm in the face of disrespect than to lash out. It takes discipline to observe betrayal and injustice and choose not to retaliate immediately. It takes vision to understand that every word, every reaction, every decision shapes the way the world responds to you. Your compassion was never about being a doormat. It was a shield, a tool, a calculated force that allowed you to operate with clarity and precision while others fumed in chaos. What most people fail to see is that restraint contains potential energy. The same hands that comforted could also strike. The same voice that soothed could also command. Every act of patience, every choice to forgive or tolerate was a conscious exercise of power. You didn't act out of naivety or fear. You acted with awareness. You understood that true strength lies not in reaction but in timing. You held the storm inside, knowing that when unleashed it would be decisive, clean, and unstoppable. And that's why people underestimate you. They admire your compassion, but never respect the force it conceals. They assume your patience is weakness, never realizing that every act of restraint was a quiet demonstration of your mastery over yourself and over the situation. Compassion was never soft. It was your greatest strategy, your most lethal weapon, and the reason you could go to war when the moment demanded it, fully armed and unshakable. Number 3, the real shock wasn't that you fought back. It was that you finally removed your limits. Most people are stunned when someone they underestimated suddenly pushes back. They expect resistance to be timid, calculated to avoid conflict, or at best, polite. What they never expect is for the person they've taken for granted to finally remove the invisible boundaries that kept their full force contained. That's the real shock. The moment you stop censoring yourself, stop holding back out of fear of judgment or expectation, and stop shaping your power to fit someone else's comfort, you become untouchable in ways they never imagined. They weren't prepared for the raw version of you, the one that exists when all filters are gone. For years, you lived in a world that demanded restraint. You softened your edges to maintain peace, smiled when it hurt, forgave when it was easier to lash out, and held your tongue when speaking your truth would have been simpler. That wasn't weakness, it was strategy. But strategy has a limit, and once that limit is reached, the person who's been patient, kind, and controlled suddenly reveals that restraint wasn't compliance. It was preparation. They don't see the hours of thought, reflection, and discipline that created someone capable of acting with precision and power. They only notice the moment your boundaries stop being invisible. Removing your limits isn't chaos. It's liberation. It's allowing yourself to operate without bending to someone else's expectations. It's finally letting your instincts, intellect, and strength combine without apology. And the shock comes because people have always loved the version of you that fit into their narrative, the one they could predict, manipulate, or admire safely. They never anticipated the version that demands respect, that reacts on its own terms, that refuses to accommodate ignorance or weakness. When you step into that full version of yourself, every past underestimation turns into their regret. You're not fighting to prove them wrong. You're fighting to honor the power you've always had, and that realization, more than any action, is what leaves them truly stunned. They admired the angel, but they were never prepared for the warrior underneath. Number 4. Angels go to war because peace requires power to exist. Most people think peace is passive, that it's a state of comfort, quiet, or avoidance. They forget that real peace isn't a gift. It's earned, maintained, and defended. That's why angels, the ones who walk among us, calm, patient, and compassionate, are also the ones capable of war. Because peace, in its truest form, is never safe without power. It isn't just about silence or forgiveness. It's about knowing when to act, how to act, and ensuring that chaos, disrespect, or harm doesn't take root around you. The angel who stays soft forever leaves room for destruction. The angel who restrains themselves wisely preserves order. And the angel who finally goes to war shows what that restraint was always protecting. Peace doesn't survive on intentions alone. It requires boundaries, enforcement, and a clarity that most people never understand. Angels don't go to war for the thrill of it. They go because peace is fragile, and they refuse to let it be stolen or compromised. Their battles aren't reckless or random. They are surgical, precise, and inevitable when the line has been crossed too many times. They endure, they wait, they forgive, but when action becomes necessary, it is absolute. This is why the same person who calms storms with a word can also dismantle a storm with strategy. Their power isn't contradictory, it's complementary. The shock for others comes from not recognizing that restraint is never neutrality. When they called you an angel, they admired the light but ignored the strength that carried it. They assumed goodness meant passivity, that kindness required submission, that patience equaled weakness. They didn't see the truth. Power and peace are inseparable. You can't have one without the other. And when peace is under threat, the angel doesn't hesitate to unleash the force required to restore it. Understanding this flips the script on how people perceive strength. The same person who smiles, forgives, and protects is also the one whose capacity to fight ensures that what they value survives. Angels go to war not because they want conflict, but because peace without power is just a fantasy. And those who mistake them for harmless soon learn that every act of mercy was always backed by unstoppable force. Number 5. People mistake your honesty for aggression because they've never experienced truth without sugar. Most people are conditioned to expect comfort over clarity. They want their truths coated in layers of excuses, softened by politeness, or diluted with compromise. When you deliver honesty without the frills, without bending to their expectations, without worrying about whether it makes them comfortable, they mistake it for hostility. They call it aggression because it shatters their narrative of how the world should treat them. But the truth is, honesty isn't loud or violent. It's powerful, precise, and unavoidable when it's authentic. And most people simply aren't ready for it. Your honesty is a mirror, and mirrors can be brutal. They reflect intentions, motives, and character without apology. People who are used to walking around in self-created illusions feel attacked when confronted with your clarity. They think you are combative, when in reality you are merely unwilling to distort reality to make them feel safe. There's a difference between aggression and truth, but the untrained eye often cannot see it. That misunderstanding works in your favor. While they flail in confusion, you operate with awareness. You see the dynamics, the weaknesses, the lies, and you make choices based on reality, not expectation. The courage to speak truth without sugar requires discipline. It demands that you endure discomfort for the sake of integrity. Most people avoid it because they fear conflict or rejection. You, however, understand that avoidance doesn't preserve relationships or respect. It erodes them. You learned early that speaking plainly isn't about proving a point. It's about preserving your own alignment with reality and refusing to be complicit in illusion. This is why people react the way they do. They fear the honesty they crave but cannot handle. They admire your clarity from a distance but flinch when confronted directly. And that's when they realize that the angel they thought was soft isn't afraid to be raw, direct, and decisive. Your honesty isn't aggression. It's a declaration of sovereignty. It's proof that your peace, your boundaries, and your truth are non-negotiable. And once they finally understand that, there's no mistaking the power behind your words. Number 6, you weren't chosen for the battle. The battle came to you because you had the spine to face what others avoided. Life doesn't hand out challenges based on convenience or desire. Battles don't knock politely on the doors of those who wait for them. They appear where courage already exists, where strength has been quietly nurtured, and where the soul refuses to back down in the face of fear. You didn't wake up one day and decide to fight for attention or recognition. The fight found you because you were the only one standing in the space where others would have folded, turned away, or pretended the problem didn't exist. You had the spine to face the discomfort, the danger, and the complexity that most people avoid entirely. That is why you were chosen, not by destiny, not by chance, but by the simple fact that you refuse to run. This kind of battle isn't glamorous. It doesn't come with applause or validation. It comes with scrutiny, challenge, and the kind of pressure that reveals who you really are. Most people shrink from it. They look at the chaos, the injustice, the deception, and they step aside. You don't. You step forward. You meet the moment head on. And that is why what seems like war to others is really just the natural path for someone who refuses to compromise their integrity, their values, and their power. There's a difference between choosing to fight and being called to fight. Choosing implies ego, pride, or impulsiveness. Being called implies preparation, readiness, and a level of awareness that is invisible to those around you. They may have admired your calm, your patience, your restraint, but they never understood that all of that was training. Every act of endurance, every moment of observation, every decision to hold your tongue instead of reacting was preparing you for the inevitable confrontation. And when the battle finally arrives, you don't panic, you don't flail. You step into it with precision, with clarity, and with authority, because it isn't about proving anything to anyone. It's about honoring the readiness that life itself recognized in you. The battle didn't choose you. It arrived because the world needed someone who could face it without hesitation, someone strong enough to carry the weight others couldn't. That's the truth most people never see, and that's why they always underestimate the quiet angel before the storm. Number 7, you became dangerous the moment you stopped negotiating with disrespect. There's a subtle power in deciding that enough is enough. Most people drift through life tolerating disrespect, ignoring slights and adjusting their behavior to fit the comfort of others. They convince themselves it's diplomacy, patience, or empathy. But what it really is in those moments is compromise of self-worth. You became dangerous the day you refused to play that game. The moment you stopped negotiating with disrespect, you stopped allowing people to shape your behavior with their ignorance or arrogance. That refusal didn't just protect you, it changed how the world saw you. People underestimate the quiet force of someone who refuses to be disrespected. They think confrontation or boundaries are signs of anger, pride, or aggression. They don't realize it's actually a declaration of self-sovereignty. When you stop accommodating disrespect, you stop being predictable. You stop being easy to manipulate. You stop offering permission for others to treat you as less than. That's when you become a force to be reckoned with. Not because you attack, but because you simply stop letting them diminish you. This isn't about rage or retaliation. It's about awareness and choice. Every time you endured slights, tolerated gossip, or bit your tongue, you were preparing yourself for the moment you would no longer negotiate with the nonsense of others. You cultivated patience, strategy, and clarity, and when the line was crossed one too many times, your response carried a weight they never anticipated. They had grown comfortable with your tolerance, and suddenly, that tolerance vanished. Once people realize you are no longer negotiating with disrespect, they panic because the rules of interaction have changed. They expected compliance, and instead they got accountability. You didn't change. Your boundaries simply became non-negotiable. That shift is what makes someone dangerous. Not their strength alone, but their refusal to let others dictate what they will tolerate. You became dangerous the day respect became a requirement, and nothing, not manipulation, not charm, not pressure, could bend that principle. And from that moment, your power was undeniable. Number 8, your presence exposes intentions the way fire exposes what can burn. There's a quiet kind of power in simply existing with clarity and awareness. People talk about energy, charisma, or aura, but what you embody goes beyond charm. It's an unspoken force that forces truth to surface. Your presence doesn't demand attention, it commands honesty. People instinctively reveal themselves when they encounter someone who sees without judgment, who notices without overreaction, and who perceives without pretense. You don't need to interrogate, question, or push. Just being there is enough to make motives, weaknesses, and intentions impossible to hide. Most people are uncomfortable around that kind of presence. They're used to environments where deception, manipulation, and subtle games can pass unnoticed. You disrupt that. You make camouflage useless. Lies, half-truths, and hidden agendas crumble under your gaze. The same energy that allows you to remain calm and composed also forces others to confront the real version of themselves, the parts they hide, even from themselves. They may try to smile, charm, or talk their way out of it, but fire doesn't lie. And you are fire in human form, revealing who and what can survive in your light. The beauty of this power is that it doesn't rely on aggression or dominance. It's quiet, deliberate, and precise. People may admire your patience, your composure, your kindness, but none of that matters when the truth of their intentions is laid bare simply by standing near you. They can't hide. They can't manipulate. Your presence forces authenticity, and that's what makes it terrifying to those who underestimated you. They believed your light was soft, your aura harmless, and your intentions forgiving. They didn't realize that the same energy that draws them in also measures their weight, tests their honesty, and marks their limits. You are a living litmus test, a presence that shows who is genuine, who is weak, and who is dangerous. People will react, they will flinch, and some will flee, because for the first time, they face the mirror of their own truth. And fire always exposes what can burn. Number 9, they thought war would break you, not realizing pressure activates your highest intelligence. Pressure has a way of revealing the truth about people. Most crumble under it, bending, breaking, or panicking when circumstances demand more than they're willing to give. That's why people assumed that when the storm came, when betrayal, challenge, or conflict hit, it would dismantle you too. They were wrong. Pressure doesn't weaken you, it sharpens you. It activates parts of your mind and spirit that lie dormant when life is easy. The very challenges they thought would defeat you became the engine that refined your strategy, focus, and power. War is not just about strength or speed. It's about awareness, calculation, and the ability to anticipate outcomes before they unfold. Under pressure, you don't just react. You analyze, adapt, and orchestrate. You see patterns others miss, detect weaknesses they thought were hidden, and make moves they never predicted. That's why they were shocked. They expected chaos to confuse you, fear to paralyze you, and pain to weaken you. Instead, the opposite happened. Pressure revealed your capacity for clarity, creativity, and control. The world mistakes patience and calm for passivity, but in reality, those qualities are preparation. Every insult endured, every slight tolerated, every time you observed without reacting, was training for the moment when you would face intensity without losing yourself. When the storm arrived, you didn't flinch, you didn't panic, you didn't overcomplicate. You acted from a place of insight and deliberate purpose. That is intelligence in its highest form, the kind forged in pressure, honed in fire, and invisible to anyone who only sees the surface. This is why people fear what they once admired. They thought restraint was weakness, calmness was surrender, and patience was compliance. They never understood that each of those traits was a calculated reserve of power, waiting for the exact moment when you needed it most. Pressure didn't break you, it awakened you. It reminded you, and everyone watching, that an angel capable of enduring is also an intelligence capable of winning, and that awakening is far more dangerous than any blind act of rage. Number 10, you're not intimidating. You're the mirror showing them who they'd be if they had discipline. Intimidation is a word people use when they feel threatened by something they don't understand. Most assume it comes from loudness, aggression, or overt displays of power. But your presence doesn't intimidate because you shout or demand attention. You intimidate because you hold a standard they can't meet, a discipline they've never cultivated, and a clarity they've never dared to pursue. You are a mirror, reflecting back the potential they've ignored, the choices they've avoided, and the personal power they've never claimed. That reflection makes them uncomfortable. Not because you are dangerous in the conventional sense, but because you expose their own shortcomings. People react to your discipline with unease because they compare themselves silently to your consistency, patience, and self-control. They see how you operate under pressure, how you manage your emotions, how you make decisions rooted in principle rather than impulse, and they realize how chaotic their own lives feel in comparison. They thought life was about luck, charm, or opportunity, but your example reveals the uncomfortable truth. The difference between surviving and thriving is mastery over oneself. They are confronted by a version of reality that shows them who they could be, and they don't like it. The power you hold isn't about dominance over others. It's about dominance over yourself, and that is infinitely more threatening to someone untrained in self-mastery. They admire your calm in chaos, your patience in frustration, and your ability to act decisively without drama. They hate that you make it look effortless because it exposes their lack of preparation, foresight, and discipline. You don't intimidate because you intend to. You intimidate because you live fully in alignment with your own principles. Your life is a standard, and standards are uncomfortable to those who refuse to meet them. You are not a threat to them in action. You are a threat in reflection. They see themselves in your mirror, and for the first time, they feel the weight of the choices they never made. That is why you are feared, respected, and never forgotten. Number 11, you stopped trying to be understood the day you realized most people don't listen to understand, only to predict your next move. There comes a moment when patience meets clarity, and you realize the world isn't interested in understanding you. It's interested in controlling you. Most people pretend to listen, nodding along, smiling or asking questions, but their real goal is always the same: to predict your behavior, anticipate your reactions, and manipulate the situation to their advantage. They don't want insight, they want leverage. That's when you stop bending yourself to their expectations. You stop explaining, justifying, and accommodating. You stop giving them access to your inner workings, because understanding isn't the point for them. Control is. Once you make that shift, your presence changes. People can no longer map your responses, predict your strategies, or twist your words to fit their narrative. Every question they ask, every observation they make is met with clarity and precision, not explanation. You don't withhold information out of spite. You withhold it because giving it freely only feeds the very control they crave. Your silence, your measured words, and your careful choices become the space where they realize they've underestimated you all along. This doesn't make you cold or unfeeling. It makes you aware. You understand the patterns, the intentions, and the dynamics at play, and you refuse to be a tool in someone else's game. You act strategically, observing without feeding, participating without overcommitting. Every moment you used to spend trying to make yourself understood, you now spend reinforcing your boundaries and cultivating your own clarity. The shock for others is instantaneous. They expected compliance, they expected transparency, they expected vulnerability, and instead they get sovereignty. You aren't hiding. You are refusing to negotiate your inner truth for their comfort or convenience. The moment you stop trying to be understood, you stop being predictable. And that unpredictability, rooted in wisdom and self-respect, makes you untouchable in ways most people will never grasp. It is not defiance for its own sake. It is mastery, and mastery is far more powerful than anyone who only listens to manipulate could ever imagine. Number 12. The war didn't change you. It purified you. Conflict has a way of revealing who we truly are, but most people believe it changes us for the worse. They assume battles leave scars, bitterness, or regret. That's not the case for someone built to endure, someone who carries strength beneath calm and clarity beneath patience. For you, the war didn't break you. It stripped away everything that wasn't essential, exposing the core of who you are and refining it until it shone with precision and power. It purified you. Every slight betrayal and challenge acted like a fire, burning away illusions and false attachments. The parts of you that bent for the comfort of others, tolerated the chaos of the unprepared, or excused the negligence of the careless, were tested, and those that couldn't withstand the pressure fell away. What remained wasn't hardened or bitter. It was sharper, clearer, and aligned. You didn't become someone new. You became more of the person you were always meant to be. The patience, the discipline, the resilience that people once overlooked became undeniable. Purification through war isn't about aggression or dominance. It's about clarity and discernment. You learned who belonged in your space, whose intentions were genuine, and which energies deserved your attention. You didn't fight to conquer others. You fought to define yourself, to carve out the boundaries that protect your integrity and values. And in that process, every distraction, every manipulative influence, every superficial expectation was burned away. The purification also revealed your power. It's a quiet, undeniable force that no one can ignore. People who misjudged your calm, underestimated your restraint, or assumed your kindness was weakness, suddenly realized that every choice you made in peace, every boundary you maintained, and every measured response in the past was preparing you for the clarity and strength you now wield. War didn't alter you, it purified you. And in that purification lies the terrifying truth others fail to understand. The angel they admired now stands unshakable, deliberate, and unstoppable, a force born not from rage, but from alignment with her true self. Number 13, your silence isn't retreat. It's the space where you load your next move. Most people misunderstand silence. They see it as withdrawal, weakness, or fear. They think that when you stop speaking, when you stop reacting, or when you distance yourself from the chaos, you are retreating. In reality, your silence is far from passive. It is the space where strategy, clarity, and precision are born. It is where you gather information, observe patterns, and prepare your next move with intention and intelligence. While others speak to be heard, you remain silent to see, to calculate, and to act with purpose. The power of silence is underestimated because most people are uncomfortable with uncertainty. They want immediate reactions, instant explanations, and constant affirmation. Your refusal to provide those things unsettles them. They expect noise, they expect compliance, and they expect predictability. When you refuse to give it, they are forced to confront the reality that you are not playing by their rules. Silence, in your case, is not emptiness. It is loaded, deliberate, and charged with potential energy. In that quiet, your mind is working in ways they cannot see. You are analyzing, connecting dots, anticipating outcomes, and deciding when and how to act. Every pause, every withheld word, every measured gesture is a tool. You have discovered that action without thought is chaos, and thought without action is wasted energy. Silence bridges the two, giving you control over timing, narrative, and impact. The most striking part is that this silence isn't threatening because of intimidation. It is threatening because of mastery. People fear what they cannot predict, and your silence makes your next move invisible until it lands with perfect precision. They realize too late that the same person they thought could be controlled, misunderstood, or underestimated is actually orchestrating the game from the quiet corner of observation. Your silence isn't absence, it's preparation, strategy, and strength. It is the calm before a storm, the pause that guarantees accuracy, and the invisible force that makes your presence unforgettable and unstoppable. Number 14. They called you an earth angel because they saw your light. They fear you now because they finally met the fire behind it. People are drawn to light. They admire it, they praise it, they celebrate it, as long as it comforts them, inspires them, or makes them feel safe. That was the version of you they knew, patient, kind, forgiving, and steady. They loved the calm, the guidance, the way you seemed untouchable in your grace. But admiration is easy when you are contained, restrained, and predictable. The moment they realized that same light was backed by fire, by resolve, discipline, and unwavering strength, everything changed. Suddenly, the angel they adored became someone they could no longer control, manipulate, or underestimate. The fire behind your light isn't loud or chaotic. It isn't reckless. It is precise, purposeful, and undeniable. It is the part of you that refuses to tolerate disrespect, deceit, or betrayal. It is the energy that demands boundaries, the focus that turns patience into power, and the clarity that transforms strategy into action. People don't fear your light. They fear what it now reveals about you and about themselves. They fear that the softness they once thought they could exploit is inseparable from the force they can no longer ignore. That fire existed long before they noticed it. Every act of restraint, every moment of observation, every patient tolerance was fuel for the inevitable awakening. You didn't become someone new. You simply stopped hiding the parts of yourself that were always there, the strength that had been tested, honed, and perfected in silence. People called you an angel because they couldn't see the battle-ready warrior beneath the surface. Now, when the fire rises, they understand the truth. Angels are not meant to be harmless. They are meant to protect, enforce, and when necessary, conquer. What they fear most is not your power alone, but the inevitability of it. You are aligned, focused, and untouchable in a way they cannot match. The admiration they once offered has turned to awe and, in some cases, fear. They learned too late that the light they loved was never weak, and the fire they ignored was never dormant. You are both, and that is a combination no one who underestimated you will ever forget. Conclusion. You were never just an angel to be admired from afar. Every act of patience, every moment of restraint, every ounce of compassion was a layer of preparation. The world saw only the light, the calm, the kindness, never the fire that burned quietly beneath the surface. But that fire was always there, ready to rise when boundaries were crossed, when respect was denied, and when the situation demanded action. Every point we've explored shows the truth. Your power isn't loud or chaotic. It's deliberate, precise, and unstoppable. You don't go to war out of anger or ego. You rise because peace, integrity, and truth require it. From the moment you refuse to be underestimated, to the instant you stop negotiating with disrespect, to the day you embraced your silence as strategy, every choice strengthened you. People mistook your calm for weakness, your honesty for aggression, your patience for submission, all the while failing to see that each trait was a weapon, a shield, and a tool for mastery. You were never changed by conflict, you were purified by it. And when the fire behind your light finally emerged, it wasn't just power, it was inevitability. This is the lesson for anyone who has ever been labeled too kind, too patient, or too soft. Kindness does not equal weakness. Compassion does not mean passivity. Patience does not mean submission. True strength lies in restraint, awareness, and the quiet mastery of self. Angels go to war not to destroy, but to protect, to enforce, and to preserve what matters most. And when they do, the world sees the full measure of their power, a force both awe-inspiring and unforgettable. If this message resonated with you, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss insights like this. Like the video if it hit hard, comment your thoughts and experiences below, and share it with someone who needs to see the truth about strength, patience, and the fire that lies beneath a calm exterior. Your support helps us continue delivering content that challenges, inspires, and empowers. Stay blessed always.